Omgyana Tamarandasya, Gananjana Salakya, Chakshunmalitam Jena, Tasma Shri Guravaina. Mukam Kutava Chalang Pungan Mungayate Gurin, Yet Kripa Tadaham Bande Shigurum Dinadana. Vachikapatubhyascha, Kripa Sindubhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo. A few days ago I was driving down the street and I saw a bumper sticker. It said, just have fun. It's part of life, right? Just have fun. And actually that's the nature of the soul. It has three natures: eternality, knowledge, and bliss. But in this world it's hard to just have fun. People work. I found on the internet that 85% of the people that work, they don't like their job. It's not fun. Sometimes it is. But mostly it's not so fun. How many of you in here have had relationships that went sour? Yeah, practically everybody. So it starts out fun. Then it sometimes becomes sour. Not so much fun. There's a statement in the... Maybe we could have this door closed, because we have a fire station down the street and they come by every 5 minutes. We have... No, that could be closed on. We have windows here. What do you think? Should we have this door open? What do you think? Okay. If anybody wants the door open, this door open, then shout. Open the door! There's a statement in the Vedic literatures, Lada Tapakari, which means that whatever we try to enjoy in this world, eventually that becomes a source of distress. So we all want pleasure, we all want knowledge, and we all want to be eternal. Actually, we are eternal. In the spiritual world beyond this world, believe it or not, there's a place where there is people just having fun, just having a great time. And they're eternal and they have full knowledge. So Krishna comes and he gives us the Bhagavad Gita, which is actually a ticket. It's an invitation by Krishna to the spiritual world where there's just fun. It's a great time. But there's, in order to go there, there's some purification needed. And that's actually why we do this chanting of Hare Krishna. This purifies the soul. It purifies the mind. And actually qualifies us to go to that spiritual world. It's not an easy thing to go back to the spiritual world, but it is possible. Also, I was looking on the internet and I was just curious about the whole world. In the whole world, I was wondering how many divorces there are in the world a day. Are you ready? And you take a guess. Anyone take a guess? In the world, every day. 10,000. 70,000 a day. That means during this class, there'll be a lot of... No, I'm sorry, 7,000. Take a zero off. 7,000. Yeah, the 7-year itch, right? I heard this one. It's a joke, but there's some seriousness to it. 2 golden rules to a happy marriage. Are you ready? The wife is always right. The second golden rule, if for some reason the husband thinks he's right and the wife is wrong, he should slap himself in the head and go back to rule number 1. So maybe those 7,000 weren't following the golden rules. But in this material world, it's not easy to have relationships, lasting relationships. Why? Because ego, quite often ego, false ego. We have a real ego also. We have a real ego and a false ego. The false ego is that I'm this body. And there's a real ego, is that I'm the soul. Ego just means identity. So there's a true, real identity, and that is the soul, or the soul within, that never dies. And the false ego, the false understanding, is that we're this body. The body it's a vessel for the soul. It continues. It's like I mentioned this the other day in class, that I met this lady. It was her birthday, and I told her, actually, today is not your birthday. She said, "What? Tell my mother that." So then I showed her, we have in our Bhagavad Gita, we have a changing bodies picture. So I told you, see, you're the soul going through this body. And when the body dies, you're not going to die. So you've never been born. You've always existed. There's no birth for the soul. And you're the soul within. You're not this body. She said, "Oh, wow, yeah, I believe in this. I never heard that, though." So she was happy to hear that. There's no death for the soul. There's no birth. We don't have birthdays, believe it or not. We're eternal. So I also wanted to speak a little about the nature of this body. Things that happen to this body that we don't want to have, that we have to accept. Like this body, it gets old. When I was young, when I joined this movement, I became a monk. I was 22 years old, and this here is called a sika. You know, all of us monks, we have sikas. Maybe you could say that, sika. Sika, yeah, that's a sika. So generally the sikas are supposed to be up here. Yeah. When I joined, it was up here. But as the years went on, it slid down, and this is called the senior citizen sika. It happens, you know. And also, you know, when I was growing up, you know, hair it always would grow here, but now it's growing here. You know? I don't know if you had that. I just shaved my ears. You know, it's like a weird body, and the nose. So it's, you know, old age is not a nice thing. And I was distributing books. My services, I distribute books, our Bhagavad Gitas and other books at Balboa Park. Some of the devotees here have gotten books from me. So I was, one elderly lady was walking by, and I said, "Excuse me, miss, can I get your attention?" She said, "Oh, no. If I stop now, it's going to be too hard to get going again. I got the momentum going now." I was like, wow, that's amazing. She had a sense of humor, yeah. But this is old age. And there's one joke also, one person he said about old age, he said, when you get old, you bend down to tie your shoes, and while you're down there, you're thinking, is there anything else I have to do while I'm down here? You're getting up and getting down. For old people, that's a chore sometimes. So old age, disease, we don't like disease. It's like we had this pandemic, which is almost over now, right? It's almost, thank God it's almost over, right? And I have this disease called eosinophilic esophagitis. Believe it or not. What's that? Yeah, right. So it's a small thing, just a problem with the esophagus. So I was able to control it by diet. But there's so many diseases we've never even heard of. Anybody ever heard of that disease before? There's so many diseases we never heard of before. So we don't want disease. We don't want old age. Death is coming. We don't want that. Of course, as I mentioned, it's not there for the soul. There's no death for the soul. So I also wanted to say something about questions and answers. Since we were able to speak, we've had many questions. We would ask our parents, "Oh, what is that, Mommy?" "Oh, that's a tree." "Daddy, what's that?" "Oh, it's a bird." So many questions that we asked from the time that we could speak. But as we get older, we start asking more serious questions, like, what's the goal of life? Why am I here? These are important questions that unfortunately you don't find in the universities and the schools, but they are found in books of wisdom. So when I was 22, 4 years ago, 44 years ago actually, I had these questions. I was living in Los Angeles, and I had these questions. Actually, this word question comes from the word quest. So I had this quest for enlightenment. I wanted to know what is the goal of life? What happens at the time of death? These are important questions, and I couldn't find the answer to them. So, would you like to hear my little journey of how I became a monk? I was in Los Angeles, and I was at a friend's home, and on television there was a monk speaking about spiritual subject matters, and it was kind of interesting. So I was listening, and in the show, he mentioned that there's centers where you could learn more about this. So in Los Angeles, there happened to be a center there. So I went to this center. It was Transcendental Meditation, TM. Many of you probably heard of this, TM. Back in the 60s and 70s, it was big. Now it's not so big. So I went there and I heard what they had to say, and after 3 days of hearing what they had to say, if you want, you could buy a mantra. Now in the West, we're quite naive about meditation. We didn't know that you don't buy mantras, but yeah. So I was interested, and I wanted to know more, and I wanted to advance in spiritual life, so I bought my mantra. $120. Now it costs what? Now it costs over $1,000. Inflation. So you're supposed to chant this mantra for, I think, 15 minutes or 20 minutes twice a day. So I was doing this religiously. And I was reading different books on yoga and meditation and philosophy, and I was really on a search. I wanted to know. But then I thought, Los Angeles probably isn't the best place for spiritual life, right? So I was reading this one book by Baba Ram Das. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He was a famous guru back in the 60s and 70s. So in his book, he mentions Maya, you gotta be a good girl. Yeah. You gotta sit and be quiet, otherwise you gotta go out. Be a good girl, Maya. So I was reading this book by Baba Ram Das, and in this book he says, as one advances in spiritual life, one becomes detached from material life and material things in general. So I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. You go on a spiritual journey, then you become detached from material things. So I went traveling, and I was looking for a paradise. I wanted to go to a place where people were like-minded. They were also on this journey to understand the truth. So as I was traveling, all my things were stolen. And I was thinking, wow, that's good. This path is working already. So then I thought, well, maybe the Bahamas would be good. Some spiritual people there. So I went to Miami and got a flight over to the Bahamas. And I was very disappointed. It was really materialistic. So I decided to go back to Miami, fly back to Miami. But before I flew back to Miami, someone stole all my money. And I was thinking, boy, this is really good. This is fantastic. Believe it or not, I felt so good. When that happened, I just thought, this is fantastic, because I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm going into a part of my life where I'll never go back to material life again. I just felt so happy, like I've never felt before. And I was just anticipating the next page to open in this journey. I just felt this so strong. I was euphoric. I was so happy, anticipating what's going to happen next. So I flew. Somehow I still have my ticket to Miami. Thank Krishna. I had the passport. And I still had this book by Baba Ram Das somehow. This is all I had. So I went back to Miami. And I'm hitchhiking, not knowing where I'm going. So some guy picks me up and he says, so where are you going? I said, I don't know. But I like it. I am on this journey and I like it. So he said, well, you know you're going to need some money. Wherever you're going, whatever journey you're on, you're going to need some money. So why don't you go down to Key West and get a job? So I thought that was a direction from some higher force. So I went to to Key West and got a job. I'm still reading this book by Baba Ram Das. And he has books recommended to read in the back of his book. And one of them was Bhagavad Gita. And when I saw those two words, Bhagavad Gita, I said, wow, that looks like an interesting book. So I went to the local library there in Key West, and there was 4 different Bhagavad Gitas. So now what? Fortunately, this Bhagavad Gita was more attractive, so I pulled it out. Because a lot of Bhagavad Gitas, people are given their own interpretation. They're not actually living the teachings, but they give their own interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. But Prabhupada, who translated this, he lived the teachings his whole life. And that's why it's called Bhagavad Gita as it is. And you could call the other Bhagavad Gitas Bhagavad Gita as it isn't. because there's a lot of speculation. And to show that is true, so many Bhagavad Gitas came here to the West, Europe and America, but nobody became a devotee of Krishna. But when this one came, thousands of Americans and Europeans, all over the world, people became devotees of Krishna. And their life became wonderful by following the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. So, I'm reading the Bhagavad Gita in my apartment, and I'm just flabbergasted. I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. I couldn't put it down. I read it in like 7 days. It's just so amazing. And you know, sometimes you might be reading something, you just know this is the truth. So that was the way it was. I just, this is it. This is the highest truth. We have a friend here, Victoria. I think you had the same experience. You just zipped right through it, right? And she was convinced. It's very powerful. When Krishna speaks, it's a very powerful message. So from reading the Bhagavad Gita, I began my real meditation. You know, this mantra that they gave me for $120, that was nothing compared to the Hare Krishna mantra. So that mantra that they gave me, I pretty much just rejected, and I chanted the Hare Krishna mantra. So yeah, it's very nice. I've been doing it for 44 years, and it just gets better and better every day. Gets better and better every day. This is the nature of spiritual life. Material things, they kind of eventually they get old. But Krishna is ever fresh. And the Bhagavad Gita, you can read it over and over again. This is one of my vows, that I read a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita every day. And it doesn't get old. I mean, how many books can you read a chapter every day? But this is spiritual wisdom. It doesn't get old. And it's purifying. So, I had this job where there was nobody else around, so I was just chanting this mantra all day long. And I was getting a spiritual high. I was becoming transcendentally, spiritually intoxicated. But without having to pay for drugs. Much less expensive, right? Cheap. So, after 3 days of chanting this mantra at the place where I was working, I went out of the exit, and there was devotees doing what we were just doing here, chanting. They were just outside my workplace on a pier, chanting with drum cartels. And I went over to them and said, hey, you guys are chanting the same mantra I chant. And they said, really? I said, yeah, I've been chanting that building over there for the past 3 days. And I'm like, really? So they were devotees of Krishna. And they spoke to me the philosophy of Krishna consciousness for some time. And they said, you know, we have a center here. You could come and you could join us in the center here. I said, all right. So I moved in that night to the monastery. But it was something, it wasn't really a temple. Like here, this is a real temple here. It was just a few devotees that were trying to keep something together. So they told me, you know, if you go to Miami, you'll see there's a real temple there. And there you could learn more about the philosophy. So I think it would be better if you go there. So I thought, all right. So I went back to Miami, and this temple was beautiful. It was 8 acres and had like 70 mango trees. And these mangoes were good. We had mango ice cream, mango pie, mango cake. We had mango everything. Mango chutney. We had mango coming out our ears. So, and there was 6 acres of flowers. We used to send flowers to all the temples. And there was banana trees. It's tropical. It's the only tropical place And southern Florida is the only tropical place in the mainland America. So it was just beautiful, just lush, so much greenery, and there was a lake there, and there was peacocks all over the place, and ducks. And remember when I left LA, I was looking for paradise. That was paradise. It was beautiful. And the devotees also, they're just wonderful. What I liked most about the devotees was their speech. Because they're hearing from Prabhupada, our guru, and he's so exalted, he's such a great devotee, he speaks, and it's inspiring, it's enlightening. So when you hear such a great saintly person speak, it kind of comes out also of he who hears, or she who hears. So that was my journey to being a monk. Nice journey. Okay, so now is there any question or comment?
How long did you say you've been on this journey?
44 years.
44 years ago you became a monk.
Yeah.
Where have you spent the majority of your time?
Actually, believe it or not, at that temple, Maya, Mom's going to take you outside. 1, 2, 3. So I stayed at that temple in Miami for 12 years. Okay, now Mom's got to take you outside. Sorry. What did she say? So I stayed there for 12 years in Miami, and then due to circumstances I ended up in Los Angeles again. So I was there for 30 years. We have a beautiful temple there, actually. It's a little oasis there in Los Angeles. Beautiful. So I was there for 30 years, and now I've been here for 2. So Miami, LA, San Diego.
What's your daily, as a monk? How do you spend your time? What are you up to?
Are you ready? We rise early in the morning. Was it Benjamin Franklin said, early to bed, early to rise, makes a person healthy, wealthy, and wise. So we wake up somewhere between 3 and 4, and we do our meditation. Should I tell them how long when I actually wake up? Might be shocking. I wake up at 1:40.
Do you ever go to bed?
I go to sleep at 7:30, so I get about 6 hours, and then I take about a 10-minute little nap later on in the morning. I get about a little bit more than 6 hours, and then we do our meditation. We meditate for 2 hours, the Hare Krishna mantra. It's very nice. You get a realization of your spiritual existence by chanting this one. It's very powerful. Because the name of Krishna and Krishna are non-different. So Krishna is the supreme spirit. God is also spiritual. He doesn't have a material body. It's a completely spiritual body. And we're also spirit. So that connection, yoga actually means connection. So that connection is very pleasing to the heart and actually to the mind. So at 4:30 we all go to the temple room here. Have you been to the temple room yet? Yeah, we have a nice temple room here. And we all go there at 4:30 and we do what we are doing here. But we stand and we dance. We're the only people in the world that are singing and dancing at 4:30 in the morning. It's a great way to start the day. There may be some other people singing and dancing at 4:30, but from the night before, the party, right? Just haven't slept yet. But we're the only ones that aren't intoxicated. Blissfully, yeah, we're intoxicated blissfully. Yes. So then at 7:15 we all gather together and we do some more singing and chanting. And then there's a talk about the philosophy. Every morning one of us monks will speak. So we do that every morning actually at, if any of you are interested, at 7:45, the talk. But the chanting, that starts at 7:15. So 7:45 every morning we have a talk on our books by one of the senior monks. And then we have breakfast together. And then we have our various services. This is Balaram Das. He's one of our main managers here at the temple. He does a lot of management and also service with the temple. So many of us, we go out and we distribute books because we want people to also appreciate this knowledge and this process. So many of us go to the park, and some go to La Jolla or the harbor over there. So we go to different places around the city, trying to enlighten people in the spiritual process. So that's it's actually also at 7:15 in the evening they have Bhagavad Gita, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, 7:15 right here in the temple. So if you're not a morning person, you're an evening person, you can also go to that if you like. And we also have the singing and dancing at 8:15? 8:15. Yeah, p.m. Yeah. Do we have the schedule? Actually, the schedule's in front of the temple there. You could see the schedule, just in case you didn't write it down. Or
Isn't it online?
it's also online. Yeah, I think we have some of our online information there. We have cards there on the table. If you can get information about our functions here. Yes, we have a question over here.
Hello. All right, cool. Okay, earlier you mentioned the soul, correct? Right? You said something about the soul earlier?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Do you think science will ever get to the point where it could measure any aspect of the soul? You know, like, because everything in science is measurable, right? But the soul, now it's not.
Well, the soul is actually anti-material. It's not material, so it can't be seen with any material devices. So, but we do have spiritual scientists who are intelligent enough to understand that there is a soul. There's a doctor this is back in the 70s, there was a doctor in Montreal who saw many people die right as he's looking at them. And he became convinced, just by seeing so many people die, that there's a soul, and that the soul has left the body. Because at that point, a luster leaves their eyes. They're looking at them right in their eyes, and then a luster just disappears. And he came to the conclusion that that was the soul leaving the body. And that information got to Srila Prabhupada. There was an article in the paper. So that article was sent to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada, our spiritual master, Param Guru, he was they were relaying letters to each other. And Prabhupada was very appreciative that this doctor came to that conclusion. And yeah, we have many scientists that understand the existence of the soul. It is the science of self-realization, actually. Yes, we have a question back there.
Hello. So, how would you suggest the average person detach from the material desires in their day-to-day life?
Very good question. How to become free of material desires in our daily life. That's a big challenge too. Because we have these material bodies, we have our senses, and we've grown up thinking that we are these senses, that we are this body. And we think that happiness is to satisfy these senses, to satisfy the mind. So the best thing that one can do to become free of these material desires and actually keep us chained to the material world. These material desires we have, all of us have, they're what keep us chained to samsara. Samsara means the repetition of birth and death. These desires, they keep us in the material world. So by reading Bhagavad Gita, you get logical understanding of how we're not the body, we're the soul, we're part of the Supreme Soul. And by service to the Supreme Soul, we attain the happiness that we're trying to achieve by trying to satisfy the senses. Yeah. And chanting Hare Krishna also. Chanting Hare Krishna is very purifying. It's very purifying. Actually, I wanted shortly, I just wanted to read. It's like whenever someone thinks of getting something, they want to, oh, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? So one may ask, well, if I take up this spiritual journey, what am I going to get out of it? What am I going to get? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he explains what you get out of practicing spiritual life seriously. So here it is. He says, you become fearless, you become pure, you cultivate spiritual knowledge, you become self-controlled, you become simple. We live a simple life. None of us have TVs, or we don't go to movies. Practically everybody has a TV, and they watch the news, and they watch movies, and so much stuff on there. But actually, all these things on the TV, it actually contaminates the soul, contaminates the mind. And the mind is like a very sophisticated computer, and all these impressions that go into our mind actually causes so much destruction to the soul. Well, not destruction, but disturbance to the soul. Especially people like to watch the news, the evening news, the morning news. In Brazil, they had a radio station. It was called the Good News Channel. Just good news. No bad news. Right? You imagine. But they had to stop after 6 months. They ran out of the good news. But there's plenty of bad news, right? There's plenty of bad news. So people, somehow they like to hear the bad news. But there's no good news there. In television, in general, people that are making all these programs, they don't have your good intentions at heart. It's all about money, right? All these television programs, movies, it's all about money. They're not thinking of your welfare. Thinking of putting something on there that's going to benefit anybody. Right? It's all about money, and people get captured. So then, continuing on with this, freedom from anger, non-violence, when one becomes truthful, becomes tranquil, averse to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentle, modest, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy. This is what you get. Sounds pretty good, right? So this is what we get when we take spiritual life very seriously. Okay? Maybe there's one more? If not, we'll... Okay, thank you very much.
Nice round of applause for Vijaya Prabhu.